BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, matchup, even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? We'll get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every single week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino, get in on a game of blackjack, poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet online. The game starts here. All right, guys. Welcome back to the show. Believe in Rams, part of the Believe Network. Erin Coscarelli with you. Be sure to subscribe, comment, rate, follow this podcast. You can also catch us on Believe TV and follow us on the socials. It feels like deja vu. We have a lot to get to. I am welcomed by, of course, our favorite former team doctor for over 17 years with the NFL. And of course, a bunch of other leagues. There's too many to say. We don't have a lot of time. Dr. David Chao, you can check his podcast out called Sports Injury Central on Believe. And you can follow him on Twitter, which, by the way, he breaks down all the injuries, one of which we need to talk about. Hi, doctor. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing fine. And Erin, I take no offense to this, but we have to stop meeting like this. We just did this. I mean, we did it week 1. Now we're week 2 doing it again. I mean, we don't want to be regulars only because of the news that we have to discuss. No offense otherwise.
No, it does. It seems like deja vu. Last week, we were, of course, talking about Puka Nacua going on IR, and it seems like it could happen with Cooper Kupp. How about give us the latest? According to Sean McVay, he is expected to miss an extended period of time with an ankle injury. This is a guy that's been banged up a couple times before in previous seasons. What can you say about Cooper Kupp's status now?
He has had a history of ankle issues in the past, but this is a new injury. This is not like a chronic or he's injury prone. This is an E-version ankle sprain. We were hoping for the best, but it seems like it's not exactly the best. An E-version ankle sprain was your foot gets caught. Turns out in some ways it's like a high ankle sprain. And obviously he didn't finish the game. We were hoping by video that maybe he didn't finish the game a little bit due to the score and whatever and save him for next week, but it looks like it's worse than that. And now, obviously, with Puka already out and your tight end never made it back and the whole left side of your offensive line out, and it's a whole host of issues there. And you already started with arguably three of your top 4 DBs out, and the other one's still coming off of injury. And I have to give it to Sean McVay. They've actually put together, and Matt Stafford, a great effort given all the injuries. I think the 49ers wear the crown now as the most injured team.
Right, especially heading into week 3. Something Sean McVay has never done is gone 0-3. And Rams fans, frustrated, right? They don't have Aaron Donald on defense, like you mentioned, issues in the secondary. Now the offensive line is banged up. I mean, they've been banged up since training camp. It's kind of, you got to feel for Matthew Stafford right now as he's entering the season and it's only week 3. An extended period of time. Can you give us any sort of insight what that could mean?
Well, obviously we're talking weeks, not days, right? And the question is, can he avoid IR? I'm not sure that he can in terms of Cooper Kupp. And then you have Jonah Jackson with the announcement of the scapula again, and he was your guard that got moved to center and now moved back to guard because of your left guard issues. The only piece of good news is coming off a suspension, your quote starting left tackle is back. Alaric is back in theory, but remember in the preseason, he had a high ankle sprain. So we don't know yet that he's 100%. He is exiting suspension, but his physical status has yet to be determined there. And I guess the only good news is if you go to Sports Injury Central and look at the field views where we chart out the Rams offense defense and we do it against their opponent, you're playing a kind of banged up 49er team next week. That's the only thing you have to your advantage there. And believe it or not, our field views and SIC scores and our SIC picks where we, do the injury advantages, our numbers showed strongly Minnesota Vikings in week 2. Now, we had to go back in our war room and check it twice because who wants to pick against the 49ers, right? But obviously they want to outright the Vikings. And the 49ers, your opponent, got worse. Deebo Samuel with the calf. CMC already on injured reserve. Trent Williams cramping and not in full shape. Dre Greenlaw still not back. Hafunga, their safety, not really back yet. And so San Francisco has his issues along with Debo with the calf now, right? And so it's a battle. It's the injury bowl in week 3.
Yeah, right. Well, and I think the Rams really need this win. This was last week an expected W for the team, knowing they swept them last season. They don't get the win against the Cardinals, and this is an ever more important division game against the Niners. They do play host to them. The Niners are coming down to Los Angeles. But it's definitely not what you want to see, especially when they were riding on the offense to sort of overcompensate for what they were missing on the defensive side of the ball. You said a high ankle type sprain on a wide receiver. How, even if he does come back, and remember, guys listening, we talked about Puka Nacua's PCL sprain, and I remember you saying that's an injury that lingers. So even when Puka potentially, who could come back right after the bye, week 7, when they play the Raiders, still may not be necessarily the right move, considering how does one rehab a wide receiver dealing with, is one injury worse than the other? Is what Puka's going through worse than the one that Cooper's dealing with?
Well, a grade 3 PCL, and I'm not suggesting Puka has that, is certainly worse than a low grade high ankle or eversion sprain. And the opposite is true. A grade 3 eversion or high ankle sprain is worse than a grade 1 PCL. So it depends on the grade. But right now, even though Puka hit IR a week ago and his clock is ticking, we're looking at probably mid-season return, week 7. If I were a Rams fan and you told me I could have Puka back 100% in week 7, I would take that, right? I mean, you have the week 6 bye. And then, but I think Cooper, hopefully, I always look at good news. I'm hoping that Cooper comes back and beats Puka back, even if he goes on IR and misses a couple of weeks, hopefully, right? And that's bad news because that means Puka's not back immediately. But the good news is at least you get one of them back, and I think Cooper beats him back. But it's your big key there is going to be the health of your left tackle coming back off suspension, right? Is the high ankle still lingering before he left? Because you need help over there, right? The Rams need help, and their offense has changed completely. And you can't even run your full rotation. Blake Corum doesn't get any time until garbage time because he's in from college and he needs to be able to block, with the offensive line deficiencies. And I think that's why it's been Kyron mostly so far. And Sean McVay has basically said that without saying it, right? I mean, the game script, he was trying to get Blake Corum, but with the O-line injuries in week 1, it was hard to.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that you like to see the glass half full in these instances, because injuries like this, I guess the other good news is, like you mentioned, the bye is early. It's week 6, early-ish, and they may need that time off. But yeah, we wanted to get you on really quickly, and unfortunately, under the circumstances, it just seems like the other good news, at least they have depth at the wide receiver position. But I think Rams fans were really looking forward to having both Puka and Cooper at 100% this season, and they're not going to get it.
Well, you really never had them side by side before, right?
Yeah.
And still haven't yet. And that's a sight to behold. Look at what happens in Miami when you have Tyreek and Jalen Waddle side by side, or tonight we're recording it Monday night before the Monday night game. No AJ Brown, but when AJ Brown and Devonta Smith are there, the Eagles are more formidable, the duo. And the 49ers, who you play next week, aren't going to have Ayuk and Debo, right? And it changes the equation when you have to account for both of them.
Anything you can point out with regards to McCaffrey? I mean, I know this is a Rams show, but we care about whether or not they're going to have that weapon. Uh, any details with regards to his injury?
I don't know when the Rams play the 49ers the second time, but he will not be there the first time. We've been saying that he was going to hit injured reserve. And really, what changed here, look, the Puka thing, I believe we talked about was always a PCL with a bursa on top of it, not just a bursa. But it's my belief that the CMC thing was always a calf in the preseason. And in week one, it became calf and Achilles tendonitis. And the worry there is, and the Rams would make this same decision. If there's an increased chance of Achilles tendon rupture, you can't play the guy right now.
Mm.
And I think that's what happened to CMC. He could go out and play, but everyone would really kick themselves if he went out and tore his Achilles. The chance of an Achilles rupture after Achilles tendonitis is low, but it's still 100 or 200-fold higher than if you don't have Achilles tendonitis, right? And I think that's what the 49ers were saying. Look, let's not tempt fate here. And we're trying to make a postseason run. Let's take our time now with CMC. And obviously, it helps when you have Jordan Mason, right? He's been doing very well through two weeks.
Yeah. The 49ers do not play the Rams again until week 15, December 12th, obviously on the road. But, yeah, these injuries mounting up early on in the season is the last thing for sure Sean McVay wants to see. With Cooper, this was just, he rolled on his ankle. It wasn't an already sort of lingering thing that he'd had before, correct?
Yeah, it's not related to what he had before. He's not injury prone, but he got rolled up on the outside of his ankle foot, and it was an eversion sprain, medial deltoid, possible high ankle sprain. And obviously, he's a wide receiver. He needs to be able to cut, run, and jump to get separation and play. I remain fingers crossed. Maybe he can, even though they said extended, he hasn't been put on injured reserve yet. Of course, they don't have to put him on injured reserve yet. Usually you don't until you have a corresponding move. But let's see what happens here. Keep our fingers crossed that maybe he can keep it under the IR timeline.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. So the IR designation is out minimum 4 weeks. The move, right, that they're not necessarily designating him with means there could be potential when they don't go on IR. That means the team is saying it's less than a month, and that's a possibility that we can assume potentially.
Yeah, and to be clear, to IR means missing the next 4 games.
Right.
So depending on how you count it, it's really 5 weeks before you come back, right? It's missing the next 4 games. So for Puka, he played week 1, hit IR. So he's out week 2, 3, 4, and 5. Then you have the bye week 6. That's why week 7 is the very first chance that he could return, be eligible to return, even without a bye weeks. So you got to miss 4 games. And so, if you look at Cooper Kupp, if he were to hit IR, he would not be back until, let's do the math, week 8. He's already played week 2. So week 3, week 4, week 5, week 6 is a bye. That doesn't count. Now week 7, he's got week 8. It's not 4 weeks, it's 4 games.
Did you get that, guys? 4 games. That's important to know, right? Because in our minds, we think, 4 weeks, 4 games of the season. But yes, absolutely. With the, it does not include a bye week. So I guess we will wait and see. But do you think that if it was something, see, I'm trying to pull everything I can out of you. Do you think that if it was something that they would have made that designation today?
They don't have to. I mean, they don't have to. Like it's 4 games. So if they make the designation by Saturday before the Sunday game, it's still the same 4 games. The only reason to make it earlier is if they want to sign someone else or call someone else up from the practice squad to the active roster, and they need room on the 53-man roster. That's the only reason to do it. But remember, you have a 16-man practice squad, right? And yes, practice squad people can get poached by other teams, But if you're poached by another team, you have to be on their 53-man roster the rest of the season. That's not that likely. So it's possible the Rams are just waiting to see. And look, if Cooper Kupp could return to play, let's say in week 7 and only miss 3 games, it's worth hanging on to the roster spot. So it's not a foregone conclusion yet, even though McVay has said extended absence, that he will for sure go on injured reserve based on video and the injury. And at this point, that's all we have to hang our hat on or keep hope alive.
Well, I hope you don't take offense to this, doctor, but I really hope I don't see you next week.
Well, that's fine. Let's make it not happen. Okay.
Fingers crossed, no more injuries for the Rams. But in the event you do want to hear about other things happening in the NFL, check out his podcast, Sports Injury Central, Dr. David Chao. You also are on Twitter, Pro Football Doc. Hey, look, I appreciate the quick turnaround. I know you were super slammed today, seeing a bunch of patients, but we really appreciate. I think a lot of people are curious what to expect with Cooper, the latest with, even the rest of the guys that are. I mean, there are a host of guys. I mean, Cooper, Nacua, obviously you have Williams, Jonah Jackson, Avila. There's Avila. There's so many. It's a bummer. So hopefully those guys get healed up quick and we can see them back on the field soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. And let's not do it too often with the best of intentions.
Thank you, doctor. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.